everyone, and welcome to my March TBR video. If you watched my February TBR and then watched my February wrap-up, and I'll provide the links down below, you probably noticed that among a lot of the books that I mentioned that I wanted to read in February, I actually read very few. I read a lot of books in February overall, but it was very hard to stick to a particular TBR. I think I mentioned that in my very first video that I'm not very good with TBRs. So today I'm bringing you my March TBR, and as always with a disclaimer that I may not actually read all of these books, or any of them. But seeing how I have a lot of books for review on my list right now, and some of them I'm super excited about, I'm keeping all of my fingers crossed that I actually stick to it. Since I'm filming this video on March 11th, so quite a few days into March, I have already read some of the books that I have on my list, and some of them have been already DNF'd, unfortunately. So I'll just go very quickly through those, and I'll provide the links down below, and definitely will talk about those more in my March wrap-up. And the first book on my list is the one that I have already read, and this is Airy by John Keyes. I got this book from NetGalley just because the description seemed very interesting. This is a fantasy novel, I believe the first one in a trilogy or a duology, and we have an Iron Age world in which some people have ability to shapeshift. And they do shapeshift into different animals. They're not definitely described as anything particular, so it's up to a reader to guess what actually they're turning into. One is like a flying beast, and another one is more like a cat-like beast. So in this age, there are two tribes that are at war with each other, plus there is a plague that is plaguing both tribes, and among all of that we have three friends who grew up from the childhood, but they belong to different castes, and because of that their relationship is a bit strained, and one of them is having feelings for another. So this is everything that I'm going to provide you with. It was an interesting story. I was not blown away by it, but I did like the setting, and I'll provide the link down below for you to check it out on Goodreads. Two next books on my list were also e-arcs that I got from NetGalley, and unfortunately I had to DNF them. I did not like them at all, especially the writing style. I'll provide the links down below, but I'm not going to talk about them right now, and I will just talk about it in my March wrap-up. Next book on my list got carried over from February TBR, and that is Sea of Strangers by Erica Cameron. This is book number 2 in the Riergan trilogy. I did enjoy book number 1, even though I was a bit critical about the writing style and how the world building took away from the action itself. Because of that, I'm still having trouble reading this book. I'm making some progress, but I'm extremely slow. I'll provide the link to the first book down below, and to the second book, the Goodreads page below as well. That was a weird sentence, but you know what I mean. So all the links will be down below. I'm still enjoying this book, but it's so slow. Next book that I have on my list is also an e-arc that I got from NetGalley, and that is Master Assassins by Robert S.D. Reddick. And this is supposed to be book number 1 in an epic fantasy trilogy about two boys who get mistaken for contract killers, and they have to flee for their lives, and also they're pulled into some enormous battle between different kingdoms, I believe. I don't really know much about this book, but it was one of those things that I looked at NetGalley and thought, yeah, it seems like something that I might enjoy, so I got it, and I'll let you know how it goes. So I have another e-arc from NetGalley. You see the trend there. And that is The Right Thing to Do at the Time by Dev Zeller. This is supposed to be a queer retelling of Pride and Prejudice. This is everything I know about this book, so that's why I picked it up. Next, I have a copy of The Beauty That Remains by Ashley Woodfolk. I received this copy from Penguin Random House, and I'm very thankful for that. This is a contemporary YA novel about three friends who deal with grief, and also it has to do with music. So we have someone who lost his boyfriend, we have someone who lost a friend, and someone who lost his sister, I believe. So this book is supposed to be a lot about grief and how to deal with it. I read the synopsis, and it seemed like something I might enjoy, and I'm very grateful that I got a copy, and plus the cover. I mean, it's so spring-like. I know that this book is already out. It came out on March 6th. Plus, it's blurred by Angie Thomas, so that's a very good sign. Next, I have a play, The Josephine Knot by Meg Brame. hope I'm reading this right. And this is from Playwrights Canada Press, so thank you so much to them for sending me this copy. And this is a play about family feud and how someone deals with emotions after one's passing. Once again, the topic of grief. I think I'm on some sort of streak when it comes to very emotional reads. I don't really know much about it except for its very beautiful cover as well, and I cannot wait to read it. Next, I have another book from Penguin Random House, and that is I Left Nothing Inside on Purpose by Stevie Howell. And this is a poetry collection by a Canadian poet, so I'm very looking forward to reading it. I feel as if I'm not reading enough poetry, and definitely not reading enough Canadian poets, so I'm looking forward to this one. Next book on my list is another one that got carried over from February, and this is Inspired by Tara Began. I mentioned it before that I got a chance not only to be at the launch by Playwrights Canada Press, but also listen to Tara read a small snippet from this play. And this is the play about a girl who gets murdered and her ghost is trying to remember what happened to her. This is much inspired by the deaths of Indigenous women and the violence against them, so I really want to read it, but just like February I got carried away in February, let's be honest. Next, I plan to continue with my reread of Sherlock Holmes stories, and I have started the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes in audio, read by Stephen Fry. And that is another collection of short stories about Sherlock Holmes, which is the most famous, alongside with Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So I'm really looking forward to reading some of my favorites, including The Empty House at the very end. Or rather, The Empty House is in The Return of Sherlock Holmes, but the Reichenbach Falls isn't there. So yay. And I plan to continue with Life Dead by Chuck Vendick, and I did a very good progress in February, and actually I've been reading this since the end of January, but I have not finished in February, so I'm going to continue in March. And this is book number 2 in the Aftermath trilogy, which is based on Star Wars franchise and is set between episodes 6 and 7. And I'm really enjoying this trilogy. Also in February, I picked up Nik Xia by Scott Reinken in audio, but unfortunately I listened to maybe like an hour and then I had to return this audiobook to the library. But now I got it again and I cannot wait to continue. This is book number 1 in a sci-fi YA trilogy, I believe, and this is a story about a boy by the name of Emmett who gets selected by a big corporation to participate in a challenge or sort of competition with some other teenagers, and there is a huge amount of money at stake. They are all being selected to go to Eden, this place where this is like an alien planet essentially, where they have to mine for Nik Xia, a specific substance that can change itself into whatever you want. So they're all have to train and compete with each other because out of 10 contestants, only 9 can go, or even 8. So it's a very interesting sci-fi book, definitely with a premise that I've never seen before, and I'm really enjoying it, so I cannot wait to review it. Next on my list is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. I went on a huge reading sprint of everything, first the Infernal Devices and then the Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare, and this is my first time reading these books. This is book number 3 in the Mortal Instruments. As you can see, I have already started it. I actually started it in February and then I realized that I read just too much of Cassandra Clare and I had to stop. So this is definitely something I'm looking forward to continue with. I was not very impressed by City of Bones. City of Ashes was slightly better, so I have big hopes for this one. Hopefully it will be better. There is another book on my list that I didn't have a chance to read in February, and I'm not sure if I will have time in March, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And this is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. And I really want to read this book, especially considering all the buzz that the movie was getting before Oscars, and it was actually nominated for a couple of Oscars and won the best screenplay. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book, and it looks like a very summery read. Why not to read it in spring? I also have a copy of Everlist by Sarah Holland from the library, and it's due back very soon. Hopefully I will be able to finish it this week as well. I started it yesterday and kind of enjoyed it. This is a YA fantasy novel, book number 1 in a trilogy, and the premise of the story is very interesting because in this world, time is money, quite literary, and as well it's blood is time. So you bleed to pay for something and that blood takes away your time. This is a very interesting premise. I'm enjoying it, but I just started, so I have no idea whether I will be able to finish it very quickly or not, but I'll keep you posted. I'm also waiting for a couple of audiobooks and I'm hoping that I might get them this month. One of them is We Are the Ants by Sean Hutchinson, and I really wanted to read this book in January, but I just had to return it, and there is a very long waiting list for this audiobook. I also have 2 books by R.A. Stephan, books 2 and 3 in the Lion Mistress series. I believe it's trilogy, and I really want to read those. I've been also neglecting that for a while. There is also another audiobook that I would love to listen to. So this is my TBR. These are all of the books that I would like to read this month. Obviously, this list might change if some books will be due back to the library or something else changes, but I'm very excited, especially since I have plays and some books for review on this list. That is always exciting for me, and I also have some solid fantasy and sci-fi, which is also very exciting. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, and I would like to know your opinion. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye! That was the most awkward smile ever. This is no... Nook. Now I'm going to listen to some jazz.